to break her up and
Welcome. Good evening. On behalf of the commissioners and staff, I would like to welcome you to the August 22nd City of Roseville Public Utilities Commission meeting. This 7-member commission is responsible for studying and advising the City Council regarding all utilities owned or operated by the city, including electric, water, wastewater, and solid waste. The Public Utilities Commission advises the City Council regarding planning, rates, public information, cable television franchises, and other matters relating to such enterprises, and may also hear citizen complaints as to operational rates. The Public Utilities Commission also advises the City Council regarding the activities of such joint powers agency as the city may be a member of, or which relate to such utility enterprises. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to put your electronic devices on silent. Pam, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bilski?
Here.
Commissioner DeLacy?
Here.
Commissioner DeMarkey?
Here.
Commissioner Knox has an excused absence. Commissioner Maish?
Here.
Commissioner Springer?
here.
And Chair Webb.
Here. Commissioner Bilski, could you please call the, say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 4 on the agenda is public comments. This item is for anyone who would like to address the commission on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. When addressing the commission, please state your first and last name for the record. Not seeing any public comment, I'd like to move to approval of the minutes. Item number 5.1 is the approval of the July 25th, 2023 meeting minutes. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I'm an abstention. Next on our agenda is the requests and presentations part of our evening. The first item is the Environmental Utilities Monthly Update. This report is by Environmental Utilities Assistant Director Sean Bigley, summarizing the monthly status of environmental utilities activities for information.
All right. Good evening, Chair Webb and members of the Public Utilities Commission. I'm Sean Bigley. I'm an Assistant Director with the Environmental Utilities Department. So I have 3 brief updates to go over in terms of activities within the Environmental Utilities Department. So the first update is an update on our ASR well drilling process. So we have 2 new ASR well projects that are about ready to get underway. One's located in the Misty Woods area, right off of Pleasant Grove Boulevard. We also have a well site that's actually in the Campus Oaks area. And so in terms of actual mobilization of the well driller at the Misty Woods site, that actually starts tomorrow. So that's actual mobilization. They're actually not going to start drilling quite yet, but mobilizing the equipment. And then mobilization for the well drilling at the Campus Oaks site begins on September 20th. So we're going to be getting going on those 2 new ASR wells. They'll be present on the site for roughly 30 days, with drilling actually taking about a week or so. Just depends on how smooth the process is relative to the bottom side improvements for the well. After that point in time, after we get some data back from that, we'll commence with the top side of the project, which is the well building, pumps, motors, all the different conveyance, et cetera. Moving on to the second item, just a quick update. We had a visit by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation and the U.S. Geological Survey staff. They visited a ASR well site here in Roseville on August 15th. This included staff leadership from both the Reclamation DC headquarters office as well as staff and leadership from the Sacramento Great Basin office. What they did is we provided them a tour of the ASR well infrastructure, just kind of getting them acquainted with how an ASR well works, just some of the more details around that. We also talked about what Roseville's potential role would be in the Sacramento Regional Groundwater Bank, which is an effort that's underway right now by the Regional Water Authority, which Roseville's participating in, and talking a little bit about how Roseville would be a participant in that groundwater bank. And what the Regional Water Authority is trying to do at this point, or working through the process, is to get federal recognition of a regional groundwater bank, which will allow us to utilize CVP supplies and provide a lot more flexibility with respect to use of water in the future. And then finally, just varying questions that we got from them. But it's worth noting one of the staff members was the senior advisor for the Reclamation Commissioner. So it was high-level folks out there to visit Roseville and see what we were doing here in the region. And then finally, I just want to end with a little plug for our second annual State of the Water webinar. That webinar is scheduled to occur on Tuesday, August 29th, begins at 6 p.m. So if you haven't gotten details, we'll make sure we get those details out to you for registration. And essentially what we do is we provide an overview of Roseville's water supply, infrastructure. We talk a little bit about sort of the threats and opportunities that are out there and some of the programs and infrastructure that we have planned to work towards resolving some of those challenges and continuing to keep Roseville in a good position from a water supply perspective. So definitely encourage you, if you have the time, please join us. So with that, I'll stop there and see if you have any questions.
I have a question on the water we store. You mentioned a bank. Mm-hmm. Did we determine how it's distributed, or can any local community, how do we determine how much we're willing to share?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as part of the groundwater bank development, what we're going through right now is a lot of the details behind that. So we're trying to figure out things like governance, as a collective of agencies that are part of the groundwater bank, how do we work through the governance of the bank? How does that work? How do transactions work in terms of water and how that water is moved or used in within the region? And then also things like sort of the aspects of finance. How do we, calculate the cost of water? How do we account for how water is used in a recharge context and utilized within the groundwater bank concept? So that's a multi-phase process that we're going through right now. We're in actually phase 2 of the groundwater bank development. It probably has about 2 more years before we get to a point where that gets transmitted to the Bureau of Reclamation for hopefully approval down the road. So more details on that, and we'll be talking about that over the next several years.
Sure. I take it that the groundwater that we have could be shared if somebody needs it, if they likewise are collecting groundwater.
Right. So I think the concept is first and foremost sort of reliability within the region in the context of using water in appropriate times and appropriate hydrology and in a conjunctive use fashion, right? So this takes what we would probably normally do in the context of serving the needs of Roseville as a community and thinking about how we can work in partnership with other agencies in the region. So the unique thing for Roseville, I'll just say this, is that because the virtue of we have a very well-developed ASR set of infrastructure that's out there, Roseville is particularly well-positioned in terms of playing various roles. Potentially, does Roseville play the role of a banker, banking water for other agencies, their water for other agencies, and is there some kind of compensation that comes out of it that gets brought back into the Roseville community? So there's some opportunities in that whole process, but there's a whole lot more detail that needs to be ironed out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else have a question or comments for Sean? Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Not seeing any public comment. I'd like to thank you, Sean, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the recycled water program. This presentation is by our wastewater utility manager, Brian Buchanan, and principal engineer Tracy Mueller, with an overview of the recycled water program for our information. Thank you.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Hello, good evening. I'm Brian Buchanan. I'm the wastewater utility manager. Tracy Mueller, our principal engineer in wastewater, manages the recycled water program for the city, and I'll let her
For a
take
whole
it away.
week, I've managed
For a whole
it.
week.
My first real task is to present to you our recycled water system. So this will be a quick overview of our system. We started delivery of recycled water in 1997 to a golf course. We now serve over 220 customers. Over a 26-year period, we've grown quite a bit. We provide about 3,800 acre feet annually, which is about 1.125 billion gallons of water annually. If you want to picture it, it's about 3,800 football fields with 1 foot of water over the top of them, so quite a bit of water. We serve, our biggest customer is Roseville Electric at the Energy Park, and they are our only year-round customer, and I'll talk a little bit about that more later. We serve recycled water demands both inside and outside of the city. I want to talk a little bit about what recycled water really is. It's governed by Title 22, and it is disinfected tertiary recycled water that comes out of our wastewater treatment plants. So it's the discharge side of our water treatment plants. We disinfect it, and we meet the Title 22 requirements. We have 2 wastewater treatment plants, the Pleasant Grove wastewater treatment plant and the Dry Creek. And the combined capacity of those 2 plants is 30 million gallons a day, average dry weather flow. We treated about 7 billion gallons of wastewater in fiscal year '23. And for recycled water, we supplied about 12 million gallons. As I mentioned, we only supplied about 1.25 billion gallons of recycled water, and that is because the highest flow to the wastewater treatment plants is in the winter. And all of our customers, except for Roseville Electric, use recycled water in the summer. So when our flows to our wastewater treatment plant are the lowest is when we have the highest demand for recycled water. So a little bit backwards, but so that's why there's the discrepancy in what our capacities are versus, well, and those are the capacities of our treatment plant, not necessarily what we're treating per day. We're regulated by the State Water Resource Control Board Division of Drinking Water. We have a master reclamation permit. Really, they are hands-off for us because we've done such a good job of running our recycled water system. They give us the authority to run our program, to permit our users, as long as we adhere to the requirements and don't violate both Title 22, which we're regulated for recycled water, and then Title 17, which is really a potable water protection, but that we have to use and follow to make sure we don't have any cross connections between recycled water and potable water. We have our own set of city ordinances and rules and regulations for use of recycled water by our users, our permitted users. Our current users are mostly the irrigation users, so the 5 golf courses, the parks, the schools, the landscape corridors, and then our industrial users, Roseville Electric, again, being the biggest one there. We do not yet provide indoor plumbing, use for indoor plumbing or residential use at all. We have grown our connections. In 2007, we had 43 connections. We now have 5 times the amount. As I mentioned, we have about 220. So we use quite a bit of recycled water these days. It's kind of the way the state is going. We were on the forefront of it, actually, back 26 years ago to start this program. We are looking into wholesaling, starting some future uses in wholesaling water, recycled water outside the city to the county. Placer 1 is looking to be the first one to probably for us to enter into a wholesale agreement. So we're working on that currently. I'm sure you've heard the state talk a lot about recycled water. The governor's got his eyes on recycled water. In the state, there's a lot of indirect potable reuse where you either put it into the ground through wells, much like we do with our groundwater, or they percolate it into the ground. And that's been used for many years now, especially in Southern California. The state is now writing new guidance and regulation for direct potable reuse, which is where it basically gets plumbed from the outlet of the wastewater treatment plant into the inlet of the water treatment plant. Much of the conferences we go to and discussions now are really centered on the state moving to that. So 20 years ago, we were fighting with soccer moms about putting recycled water on baseball and soccer fields, and now we're looking at moving in this direction. Really, if you look at it, the de facto reuse is something that's been going on for a long time, which is when a wastewater treatment plant puts their outfall into a river or creek, and a water treatment plant has an inlet from that same river or creek. So we've been doing that in California throughout the U.S. for a long time. So this is just direct potable reuse will be a little bit more connected. The likelihood of us going to direct potable reuse, I don't know if you guys know where our water treatment plant is and our wastewater treatment plants are, but they're pretty far apart. We have quite a bit of demand for our recycled water the way we're doing it now. So we'll see. I never say never, but it doesn't seem likely at this moment. With that, I'll open up for any questions you might have.
Questions here? We've got one here, yes?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I was curious about one thing, and that is salt, total dissolved solids. Is our tertiary treatment of wastewater removing the total dissolved solids?
So right now, our treatment plant, both of the two cities' treatment plants, don't remove TDS or total dissolved salts at all. In Southern California, it's a big issue because the potable water, the water supply that's feeding the treatment plants is dramatically higher in TDS than our water supply. Our water supply being as pristine as it is, we end up with a TDS in around 300 parts per million, which is quite a bit lower than a lot of the potable water supplies in Southern California. So,
Yeah, I know our potable water supply is excellent in terms of salt content, but if we start doing like groundwater recharge with treated wastewater, I'm perfectly satisfied the contaminants are all out, but the salt's not out. And don't you worry about getting a salt buildup?
So if we did go down that road of advanced reuse, which I think we're a long ways away from, normally, and especially the traditional process to treat potable or wastewater for indirect potable reuse would have to be microfiltration and reverse osmosis. That would remove the TDS. So the biggest issue with doing that treatment as inland as we are is that salt that's rejected out of that process. So it is an issue, but not for going into the ground, but for the waste stream that's generated from that process.
So we'd have to up our treatment capabilities in order to do reuse.
We don't currently treat to the level that we could do potable reuse where we injected it. We could do surface spreading, but unfortunately Roseville and the surrounding area, in that we do rice farming, a lot of that, it doesn't lend itself well, the geology doesn't lend itself well to percolating, having percolation ponds.
Thank you.
Okay, so that kind of segues into my question. So we store water, treated water in the ground through recharge. Do we store it anywhere else? Do we have, I guess the pond, you answered the pond question, but is it possible to store water in tanks? Would it be worthwhile to store water or not?
So we do store recycled water in tanks.
Okay.
We have some tanks. If you're familiar with the Roseville Energy Park, there are 2 tanks located there. We have other tanks within the system. And we have to have those tanks for peak demands. When the use is high, it kind of all occurs at the same time, so we have to use what we supply plus what we have in storage. We don't have a lot of storage. We're pretty much have storage designed for that kind of day use, that cyclical day use.
Right, because what triggered my thought process was how you mentioned in winter versus summer, when you need it. And I'm thinking we'll just store everything in winter, then you got it for summer, yeah. But
So we did, we've always wanted, we always wanted seasonal storage, like a reservoir.
Right.
But unfortunately,
cost.
Yes.
what's the reservoir? Hold on. I can't remember. There was going to be a reservoir.
A site reservoir?
No. It was, I want to say the Al Johnson Wildlife Area, but Reason Farms. There was going to be a flood control pond out there, and we had at one point looked at that as seasonal storage opportunity to increase our recycled water customer base, but it was difficult. It never turned into an opportunity that we'd hoped. So.
Any other questions from the commission? Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Not seeing any questions from the public. I want to say thank you to Tracy and Brian for your presentation.
Thank you.
Our next item is 6.3, the Roseville Electric Utility Monthly Update. This report is being given to us by Chief Executive Officer Dan Beans, and he'll be summarizing the status of the electric utilities activities for our information.
Good evening, Honorable Chair and Commissioners. So before I get into a couple things, I want to first acknowledge Lynn Garcia, who is retiring at the end of this month. She's served here as a secretary with Pam the last 4.5 years, so she will be missed.
You will be missed.
On another note, so we did send out 2 general information memorandums to City Council, and you may or may not have got copies of those. One was on transformer supply update. As you read, it is not good. Our stocks last year were about half where we were last year. So we've been trying to support development, make sure we can put transformers out in the field, but we're at the point now where we're not able to, we're very quickly going to run out of transformers that we can place in the field until we get more in. So we did meet, an update to that memo is we did meet last week with the North State Building Industry Association and their members and other developers, and gave them the update, told them what we were doing. It's just a wait and see thing. So they know that we do have a process in place. So at this point, we've kept up with everybody so far, but now people are going to start lining up in the queue. Once they get their framing permit finalized, then we will start placing transformers in that order. So they're very appreciative and supportive of our efforts. As you know, I've been advocating in D.C. and everywhere to try to raise awareness for this. I've been on the National Tiger Team, try to come up with solutions for this. The solutions are going to be longer term. It's going to include things like bringing back steel to America, bringing back jobs to America, manufacturing to America, getting back control of our natural resources and supply chains for critical infrastructure like transformers. So that does take time, and only the federal government can really solve those problems for us. So we really are going to keep the pressure on them to get that done. So meanwhile, we're working with our neighbors. We're anything that can be refurbished, we will do that. We're using every means possible to get transformers. So every legal means. So anyway, so that's the update on transformers. Hopefully, we have heard could be some in the works for us, so hopefully those come through. As you know, also, we did try to get some from overseas as a temporary stopgap, and those still have not materialized, but potentially they still will, but we'll see. The other memorandum we sent was a really, you could read it before you go to bed. It'll help you sleep. It's on day-ahead markets. And so you might recall a couple years ago, we joined the Energy Imbalance Market with our balancing area bank. And really, it's a very computer-driven 5-minute market to help optimize the energy system. And we joined that, and that helped us keep counterparties and make sure we had people to trade with, and made sure that some of our assets, like the power plant, could be utilized more efficiently. And so this new market is a enhanced day-ahead market, and so it's basically an extension of that shorter-term market. Now it's a day ahead. Same idea. The hope is you'll get some benefit from that day ahead and optimizing your resources. So we hope to finish evaluating that and bring our recommendation to council by the end of this year. And I think the implementation of this, if CAISO meets their schedule, will be 2025, maybe, somewhere in there. So with that, I will take any questions.
Questions for staff?
I have one. You mentioned transformers, of course, hard to get. I understand that other cities, I'm sure, around us and, few and far have the same problem. Is it actually the point where it will actually stop construction of homes? I imagine contractors, so they have to tie up money.
Yep.
Can't get those. Those are so vital.
It is. And that's why we're trying to communicate, because, technically, you could get to that point where projects are held up, and that is happening in other parts of the country. We're on the verge right now for us. Yeah.
I just think automatically transformers are going to appear, and it's up to us to do it. Or I mean, I would think that like the big boys like KV and Lennar should be just.
Yeah, they're experiencing it in every market, so it's not just us. So far, every market they're in, all those builders, they know that it's scarce.
Okay. And then my other, I've always got these crazy ideas, but could we, somebody who's got huge buying power like PG&E or Southern California, could we buy transformers from them? Or?
Yeah, we're working on trying to collaborate with other agencies. Part of the problem is there's thousands of different specifications on transformers. It doesn't need to be quite like that. So we are, as an industry, actually working on standardization, which the industry tells us if we do a good job on it, it might improve efficiency, their ability to put output like 25% maybe. But that standardization does take some time as well. You still got to have the steel. And in the midst of all this, as you know, the Department of Energy decided to, instead of rolling back standards to make more steel available for efficiency, they decided to put a new rule process in place, which would completely change the type of steel you use, which would go, oh, maybe that'll free up, we'll have different kind of steel. Maybe that'll solve this supply chain. But it won't, because now the manufacturers, why are they going to invest in fixing the current supply chain problem when in 3 or 4 years they got to change their equipment out for this new system? It's really disappointing that the federal government is working so hard to make our jobs so hard.
Any other questions from the commission? Is there anyone from the public who'd like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Not seeing anybody from the public, I want to say thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Our next item is the Light Up Navajo project overview. This presentation is being brought to us by Assistant Electric Utility Director Tom Pointes with an overview of the Light Up Navajo project. Thank you.
Chair Webb and Commissioners, thank you for having me here tonight. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a project that Roseville Electric Utility did this spring. Not only am I going to talk to you, but I brought some real live video back from our experience in Utah, Arizona, on the Light Up Navajo project. Light Up Navajo, also, you may hear me refer to it as LUN. That's the abbreviation that it has been given. It's 3 years in the making, and it started to grow quite a lot of traction in the utility industry. It is also known as mutual aid without the storm. I'm sure that you're all familiar with mutual aid. Roseville Electric has been always there to help any of our neighbors that needed help. This time our neighbors were in the middle of the United States. We had sat on the sideline for several years watching this develop, and as we went to APPA functions, we saw the videos being live streamed from these hardened line workers in tears from their experiences. So we said, hey, this is really something that we need to do and be a part of and participate in. I led the effort. I've been with Roseville for 21 years, and I've participated in every mutual aid event that we've had, and this was probably the most touching event and rewarding event that I've been to. Usually when we're going to areas, these events, people have already had power, and they're very anxious to get their power back. And many times we run into upset residents, not in our city, but the cities that we're helping. And so it was really an eye-opening experience, not only for me, but for all of our staff to go to this place where people who have lived there, in one case, I'm going to go over for, a gentleman was 93 years old, had never had electricity, and opened their homes to us, and they couldn't have been nicer to us. So it was a real eye-opening experience for all of us at Roseville Electric Utility. It really gave us an appreciation for humanity, and we hope it's a project that we participate in the future. So what brought on Light Up Navajo? It's a public power partnership between the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority that was established in 1959 with the American Public Power Association. Based on the amount of people on the reservation, the Navajo Reservation is the biggest one in the United States with over 50,000 residents. And out of those 50,000 residents, 15,000 families still do not have power. For the NTUA, which is the National Tribal Utility Authority, to fund that effort would cost over $1 billion. And they just do not have the funding that many cities do. That actually accounts for 70% of the U.S. households that don't have electricity all in one area. One thing that set Light Up Navajo back was COVID. And this was particularly hardened on the Navajo reservation, not only because they already didn't have electricity, but because of things that those of us who already did, they could not do. For example, we were asked to social distance. They couldn't social distance because they don't have water. So every 3 days they go to the place where they all go to get water. They fill up tanks in their trucks, and they're all there together. They couldn't social distance. Which was a big thing. They don't have grocery stores like we have, so their way of getting food or bartering to get food, they couldn't just cut themselves out from society. So they were actually one of the biggest, hardest hits groups of folks in the United States was the Navajo Reservation. The Navajo Reservation has an unemployment rate of 48%, which is 9 times the national average. Next slide, thank you. Okay, so the sheer size of the Navajo Nation. The Navajo Nation spans 27,000 square miles, and it's located within 3 states, Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. It is the largest Native American territory in the United States, and the average per capita income is $2,220. That's on the reservation. As of last year in the United States, it was $68,309. So that shows you the disparity on the reservation compared to the rest of the United States. A large number of homes not only don't have electricity, but they don't have water or telephone. The bigger push for them to have electricity is that they can't have wells at their home, so they can't have water. So these people basically have just their land, and that's it. They have no utilities, no facilities at all. What I'm going to play next is it's a short 4-minute video. I felt that rather than me sit up here and explain this to you, I think that this really gets to the heart of the Navajo project. And then I'll have a couple more slides, and then this may spur some questions that you have for me after that.
Light Up Navajo is a pilot project. The only goal of the project is to extend electricity to families who have never ever had electric services. We've partnered with the American Public Power Association, and 26 communities answered our plea. They traveled from the East Coast, from the West Coast, from Texas, all the way up to Indiana. So there was 12 states participating this year. Families told us how thankful and grateful they are to be able to buy a gallon of milk for the first time and put it in the refrigerator without having to worry about whether or not it's going to spoil in a few days, or being able to store meat and not have to cook it the same day. We had all sorts of emotions throughout the 6 weeks, from pure excitement to heartfelt tears. We're truly grateful for the communities that did send their crews here to the Southwest, to unknown territories. These families will, remember for years to come. To hear an elder say, which means thank you, and it's thank you with the deepest gratitude. It makes you realize and understand the importance of your jobs.
All right, so one of the interesting things about that video is for these people that actually had nothing, every Thursday cooked us dinner. So, all right, so what did Team Roseville give? So Team Roseville sent myself and 6 highly trained linemen. And obviously you saw the equipment we used, and you just don't fly that. So we drove it. And we traditionally buy our trucks with smaller engines because we're in Roseville, so we don't need big highway engines. So we drove it 55 miles an hour for 3 days. So that was an event for all of us. And it was a 3-day trek there and a 3-day trek back. We were there for 14 days. Halfway in between, we flew out a fresh 6-member crew. And then the original 6 flew home, and then the 6 replacements drove back with me. So everybody got a one-way trip, got to experience that drive. We had, in those 17 days total, or 19 days total, we had no accidents, injuries, or near misses for our group. One thing we didn't expect, myself included, was we knew we were going to provide a service for people, but what we gained much more from that we really didn't expect to gain. We brought all of our apprentices cycled through, and they were given experiences that we couldn't duplicate in Roseville. Many of the job sites were 2 to 3 hours from our hotel, which means a 6-hour round trip, and then you still have a 10-hour workday in there. So going through the truck and making sure that they had everything down to every nut and bolt was absolutely critical, which was a challenge because it's difficult, or it's a different construction standard that we're used to. So the terrain, the working with the other utilities, it was just invaluable for what we experienced, how we learned to work with others. And so I can't go without saying that I think we actually probably gained more from this event than those folks that we helped. Okay, some of the challenges that the Roseville crew coming from Roseville, California to the Navajo Reservation experienced were many. I highlighted some here. We weren't used to the wildlife, so there was quite a few rattlesnakes. There's not a lot of shade out there, so that was a daily routine for us to check our trucks. We found several rattlesnakes, and it was just a different environment. Taking 7 commercial vehicles across the United States that need fuel every 2.5 hours was a challenge. As you can imagine, if you have a trailer and you pull in trying to find a gas station big enough for a truck and trailer, now you have 7 trucks and 7 trailers. So that was challenging for us to time all that, make sure everybody had fuel to get all there, and that was a big, huge, logistics was a huge challenge for us. So as we mentioned, all these homes never had electricity before. So we had to coordinate with another utility that sent electricians, and they wired up their panels. Now, this was challenging because some of these homes are 100 years old. So there was some creative stuff that folks had done inside their house. And they had run one phase of trying to, a couple years ago, trying to run solar, and it didn't work because of all the sand issues they had. So there was an old solar system on some houses. So it was challenging for us once we got the high voltage to the house to actually get the house working on electricity. But to see that elder come out and turn the light switch on for the first time was just something. Laundry. So we, as you can imagine, all of our clothing is flame retardant. So the guys change that every day. So that was one of my stops every 2 days was the local laundromat for 7 of us. So that was a 3-hour trip, like every 2 to 3 days to get everybody laundry. We had a good little routine. We had little cabins, so everybody every morning would put their laundry out there. We had a good little kind of setup going, but that's something that we take for granted, but that's how these people live. Their road system is not like ours. So many of the locations that we built power lines had never had roads. So we had big tractors going in front of us making roads, but the sand was challenging. We had several of our trucks were four-wheel drive, but several were not. And so this was an everyday occurrence, pulling trucks out of the sand. This is the elder that I told you about, and we have 2 more videos left on this. The last video, you're going to see some drone footage of some power poles. I felt like this was very important to put in there. This is the gentleman that was 93 years old and lived in his home by himself and had no electricity ever for his life. The pole line you'll see at the very end was 22 poles, and it was to service his house only. And so this is a standard setup, which is why so many of the folks there on the reservation do not have power. It's just not cost effective to build a 22-pole power line for one customer. I mean, no utility would do that. There's just no economic return there. So I think, can you pause this real quick? Okay, after we, can we go back? There we go. After we got back, I had a lot of footage from the utility, and after scouring the footage, I felt like this best depicts the effort that Roseville put forth. This is Dennis Ehrenberger. I've worked with Dennis for 21 years. He's probably the most hardened person we have on our crew, and I felt that this really depicts the experience that we all went through.
Your name? My name's Dennis Ehrenberger. I work for Roseville Electric. I've been there for 21 years. I've been in the trade for 30, and I've done a lot of things, but this is the best part of it, is bringing people power. It's never had power before. It's a great feeling. It's a highlight of my career. I'll be retiring soon, and I'm glad that I've done something I feel worthwhile for another person.
I think that should go into one more video.
Your name? My name's Dennis Amber.
You get to watch it again.
Your name?
So this was the job site that was 3 hours away as well. That's all we have. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
I would just like to say thank you. That was wonderful. Great presentation. It's both heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time.
Appreciate that.
If you guys could share that video for the whole city to see on the website, that'd be awesome.
Any other comments? Questions? Wow. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Not seeing anyone from the public? Wow, thank you so much, Tom. So our next item on our agenda is board member, commissioners, and staff reports. Are there any reports from staff? Questions, comments, or reports from the commission? Do we have any proposed future agenda items? Well, next item is adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Move approval to adjourn.
Yes?
Second.
Second? All those in favor? All opposed? We are adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you again.